Honourable Member for Nipissing-Timiskaming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise in the House today to give my full support for Economic Action Plan 2014. This year's budget will continue Canada's global fiscal leadership. We've been leading the G7 in job creation and debt to GDP for some time now. This budget will deliver job creation and job reduction, which are our government's key priorities. Reducing the debt plays a key role in job creation as it reduces government expense burdens, allowing for more spending on programs and support and for job creation. The budget also sends a strong signal of stability to businesses and investors. These financial management policies have elevated Canada to be one of the best places in the world to conduct business. Canada is envied around the world. Most importantly, our government has achieved this result responsibly, not on the backs of taxpayers or irresponsible fire sales of important government assets. There will be no reductions in health care, equalization, or other transfers. In fact, they have all risen. Ontario, in particular, the province of Ontario will receive $19.2 billion in support from Ottawa in 2014-2015, a 56% increase since our government took power in 2006. Whereas the opposition parties have continued to push for excess and irresponsible spending, our government has stayed the course, invested in job-creating infrastructure and initiatives, and consistently decreased the tax burden on Canadian families. On average, Mr. Speaker, Canadian families pay $3,400 less in taxes every year as a result of our government's initiatives and commitment to making sure Canadians keep more of their hard-earned money in their pockets. This budget is focused on key initiatives to keep our economy growing, and I would like to cite a few measures in particular that mean a lot to my riding of Nipissing-Timiskaming. First and foremost, the continued support for FedNor. FedNor, as members know, particularly in Northern Ontario, plays a critical role in the economic development. Since May of 2011, I have been very successful in working with FedNor, and I am pleased that this funding has been secured in the budget. Secondly, the creation, and I've argued along with my colleagues in Northern Ontario for a fund targeted for small municipalities, and I'm hopeful that Mr. Speaker, that the announcement this afternoon will bear some fruit in that regard as part of the Building Canada Fund. These funds are important. These funds are for roads, bridges, and older water pipes. Investing in rural and northern broadband infrastructure. Just over $300 million will be invested in broadband internet access infrastructure in rural and northern Canada. This is an important measure, Mr. Speaker. This is a key for many of the residents in my riding of Nipissing-Timiskaming. With this infrastructure, 98%, I repeat, 98% of Canadians will have broadband access. Fantastic. Quite a feat. Apprenticeship loans. Apprentices in Red Seal programs will gain access to over $100 million in interest-free loans, up to $4,000. This is golden for my riding. 26,000 Canadian apprentices will benefit and help close the skills gap in Canada. Local businesses have complained about skills shortages. This will help them meet the demand and create new jobs. The Canada Jobs Grant. In the next few months, the federal government will complete and launch the Canada Job program. This indeed will be an important measure in my community. Canadians and businesses will have access to training grants of up to $15,000, a key measure, Mr. Speaker, in the continued growth and development of our workforce. Our federal government is committed to ensuring Canadians have access to job and skills training and will not allow politics to deny Canadians access to training needed to gain employment. The fifth measure that is indeed very important for my riding of Nipissing-Timiskaming is innovation, research, and youth employment. During a presentation last night we had from Canadian Manufacturers Association, they indicated that we were among the world's leaders in innovation and encouraged our government to step up and keep up that pace. There will be an establishment of a Canada First Research Excellence Fund, $1.5 billion over the next decade to universities and postgraduate programs that will generate long-term economic opportunities for Canada. And, Mr. Speaker, up to $40 million for 3,000 youth internships, which will target youth unemployment in Canada, as well as my riding for Nipissing-Timiskaming. An additional $15 million for up to 1,000 internships in small and medium-sized enterprises. So, Mr. Speaker, Canada is on the right track, but we remain focused, stay on course, and fulfill our commitments to Canadians. And I'm proud of this budget, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to support it. The federal government is on the right track, the path to balanced budgets, continued low taxes, and continued global financial leadership. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaire. The honourable member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I listened intently to the member's speech. And you know, it's interesting that in this budget there was no mention of Northern Ontario, there was no mention of FedNor, there was no mention of the Ring of Fire. Ring of Fire, $60 billion. And they couldn't, and they can't come to the table. You know, there were a number of NDP MPs up there last Friday, and we talked to stakeholders, and you know what? They weren't. They were all in unison, saying that, you know what, the federal government's absent. So I was hoping in the budget there'd be some mention of that. But he mentioned FedNor, and FedNor was not mentioned in the budget. In fact, over the last 4 or 5 years, tens of millions of dollars have disappeared from FedNor, and I was hoping in this budget some of that money would come back. So I wonder, since we have, I think we have 4 Conservative MPs in Northern Ontario, why do they hate Northern Ontario so much?
The honourable member for Nipissing-Timiskaming.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for the question. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, the NDP, including the NDP's leader, continue to spread falsehoods in Northern Ontario. He was up in Northern Ontario just this past spring saying all this money has disappeared from FedNor. The good news is FedNor is the same. FedNor is stable. And when you're into a rationalization of government services, the status quo is good news. As I mentioned to my honourable colleague, my honourable friend, I have achieved record funding with FedNor. FedNor continues to improve the lives and the livelihood of Northern Ontario. FedNor is there in spades. Our government supports the full services of FedNor.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaire. The honourable member for Malpeque.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would say it's not only Northern Ontario that this government seems to hate and have a dislike for. It's also Atlantic Canada, basically rural Canada everywhere. Nothing for the grain crisis that's in Western Canada. That's as a result of the government's previous decisions. But, Mr. Speaker, the member mentioned the $40 million over 4 years, the $40 million for the apprenticeship program. And on that, we certainly agree that there needs to be an apprenticeship program. It counts for about 3,000 people. What about the other 259,000 youth that are underemployed, out of work? What is there in this budget to address their concerns? You know, one of the problems, and you know this, Mr. Speaker, one of the problems with this government is they tinker a little bit here and a little bit there and announce a little program here, but then they leave 90% out in terms of program availability, and that's what they did with young people in this country. Apprentices we need, yes, but other young people need opportunity too, and why is there nothing in this budget for them?
Honourable member for
Well, I
Nipissing-Timiskaming.
thank the honorable member for his question, Mr. Speaker. He's right. We have started with $40 million in apprenticeship. That's a start. Just like the broadband program we started years ago, and I mentioned it covers 98% of Canadians. I'll make the member a pledge that as soon as we can recover the $40 million in the sponsorship scandal, we'll complete the rest with our apprenticeship program.
Questions and comments? Question come on tide. The honourable member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Mr. Speaker, I'm very excited about the good news for the youth of our country. The good news in terms of jobs and skill training, apprenticeship, youth employment. And I would like this member, if he would, Mr. Speaker, to elaborate on these three areas, because I thought in his speech he did a commendable job of doing that. So perhaps we need to repeat some of that good information so members opposite can get some information to them.
Honourable member for Nipissing-Timiskaming, you only have about 30 seconds.
Well, thank you, and I thank my hard-working colleague for that
Hear, hear.
question. As I've mentioned, it's a start with respect to apprenticeship loans. Apprentices in the Red Seal programs will gain access to over $100 million in interest-free loans of up to $4,000, which is a great start. 26,000 Canadian apprentices will benefit and help close the gaps. It's a start, Mr. Speaker. It's a new program. It's a start. I'm sure it will grow and help youth in Canada in the future.